Hey, everybody. There we are. Welcome to Music Makers. It is 9:30 and just going to call in a few people here. Let's see where they bees. There is Mr. Sean.
Hey, John.
Hello there. Here is Mr. Andres. What's up, my man?
Hey, man.
All right, cool. I was like, where are they? What happened? It's Tuesday. But I know how you rock and roll guys are.
Yeah.
Oh, and here's Tommy. What's up, my man? Does anybody remember our topic? I know I made it up and I sent it out.
Yes,
I think it was about food. No.
The best lasagna.
Like live studio recordings versus
That's right. That's right.
layered.
I did write it down here. I just didn't want to get my book. Yeah, it was an interesting conversation I was having with somebody who has been in the studio a lot, and they were talking about how the evolution of studios has changed throughout the years, and how it used to be in the old days. You just had to, you only had a certain amount of tracks, right? So if you had, and then you had to like take those tracks and dump them into one track, and then clean out the other tracks, and then use those tracks, and this whole craziness. So the as technology got better, the recording process changed. In the old days, they used to just get a huge room, everybody is playing live, and that's how a lot of those great recordings that we have, from the 60s and 70s were basically all recorded straight through. There was stuff added on later on, other elements and stuff, but a majority of those records were just like, okay, ready, 1, 2, 3, and they would just play them right on the spot, and that would be the recording that we heard. And then as technology got better, then they started doing a lot of overdubs, and then they started really getting ridiculous, where now they just literally would just lay down a drum, and then they lay down the bass, then lay down one guitar, then lay down another guitar, then lay down the vocals, and and by the time you get all the way to the layer, the song itself becomes sort of like in my opinion, this is of course, all of this is my opinion, everyone, just so everyone understands. But then you get this robot music, where it's too clean, and that's like some of the bands that I would say are, and not actually, I like these bands. I have nothing against the bands, like Maroon 5, right? Maroon 5 is a good band. They play some good pop songs, got a great voice. Adam's got a good set of pipes. The songs are creative, the melodic, everything is really nice, and they sound fantastic live. But the studio recording is just so produced. It's so it's almost like it's gonna shatter, because it's so crystal clear, and so you know what I mean. So the rawness of it, I feel that isn't there anymore. Like when you hear Led Zeppelin 4 or one of those albums where it was very raw and studio recording, as far as that's concerned. But then you have the Beatles that did stuff in the studio where the studio itself became part of their instrument. How they used the studio was like nobody else ever used it, probably since then, because they managed to just take a bunch of different sounds. They did layer stuff in. They took very, very time, but I mean, those are the Beatles, you know what I mean? So it's not like anybody could just go around and be like, let's do what the Beatles did. But they crafted those songs based on the fact that they didn't want to go out and play live again, so that became part of their how their sound is. So you guys, I thought it'd be interesting to have a conversation with you guys starting out your careers as a unit, to see what position you guys want to take as far as like how you're going to be recording records in the next 40 years. I mean, think about what a record is going to be like in 10 years. You know what I mean? It's going to be like
brain.
Yeah, because right now what they're doing is
Like
they're
my
recording parts from
autobiography.
different. Right, 2064. You started early with that. Usually you end with that, but
Keep on your toes. Break time's a great time.
So what I was saying is, like, if technology is so good now that people are actually sending in their parts, via computers. So I know that there are albums that have been made where no one has actually been in the studio. The parts have, they just sent them the drum track. This is the song. Here's the chords progression. They'll do a zoom and they'll sing it to them. Then they'll lay down the drums. They'll send them the parts, and somebody comes in, lays down the bass, emails them, and then everything gets put together, and then it gets sent to a studio. Studio masters it, and here's the record. Nobody got into the studio or anything. So what do you guys think of that? I guess we could start with Andres, if you want to start.
Yeah, well, as far as where we're gonna go, I'm not too certain with that because because this whole quarantine, we haven't really been able to get together, but we had our first rehearsal last week, and we were all rusty on our cover music, so we spent that time working on Sean and Tommy's originals, and that just felt really great. And I feel like as far as for a 4-piece rock band, live recording would be a good way to go. Because I like that form of communication when you're playing and recording. That's why, I always think of the classic jazz records, like Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, or you could feel the band communicating with each other when you're listening to it.
Yeah.
And as you said with Maroon 5, you feel like there's almost no, you feel like there's something missing. There's that cohesiveness. You could feel like it was just put together in post production, and that works well too when you think about layering, and there's some stuff that you can't do with just the 4 of you, because unless you bring more musicians,
right?
For example, I always think of Steely Dan, and
perfect example.
Yeah, because in reality, it was just Walter Becker and Donald Fagen making all the music.
Yeah, and then writing everything and dictating everything.
And then we're like, all right, now we need to find some guys, and they'll get the rhythm section down, but the crucial part would always be the guitar solo. And my favorite example is the song Peg, where they famously went through 8 session guitarists.
Yeah,
and
Larry Carlton, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't even him that recorded the solo. I don't remember the guitarist's name, but the 8th guy, they're like, that's it. That's the perfect solo to the song. And and with their music, their solos are more like improvised. It's not like someone sat down and came up with the solo. Right. The guy just ripped it on the guitar.
Yeah.
And that's something that you probably wouldn't be able to capture in a live studio recording, at least not in the first, 10 takes maybe.
Right.
So, as far as I see it, it's like a double-edged sword. There's a lot to gain from recording live, but when you take the time to, at least record part of it live and then add more afterwards, you could have a really nice sounding piece of music that still feels organic.
Right. And there is also the possibility of using both those methods to try to create something. So there may be tracks that you guys come up with where, we should layer this one because this has some intricate things that we want to get deep on. Again, this is like the Beatles network, but like what the Beatles did, where they kind of did that, because they took songs and they really, you can't listen to Sgt. Pepper and think that was a one take, like the whole
that was the puzzle, man. That was a puzzle. That was just
puzzle.
one thing at a time. Like Paul was leading that entire thing, and everybody else was just sitting in the corner, like waiting for their turn. It was just like, okay, I'll be the conductor now. Okay,
right.
1, 2, 3.
It's like when you have a genius like that working, it's a different because he has the tools of the recording. He also has the money. He also has access to great musicians. So all those elements in place really make, it reminds me of Pet Sounds, right? Where that album is like really it's just Brian's album. You could have just called it Brian Wilson. You didn't even have to call it,
it was Brian Wilson and his orchestra.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you might as well just call it that because it was really his thing that he pieced together. And so, I mean, there is that element of it. But then I go to like in early '90s bands like um, Pearl Jam, right? And Pearl Jam, not a huge Pearl Jam fan, but I like when they came out that they were raw and they brought that sound back again rather than that clean, long haired Warrant kind of sounds and stuff.
Mhm.
It was raw. I mean, I think Guns N' Roses kind of did it all the way through. They kind of had some raw sounds as well, so they were there in the middle of the hair bands. They weren't really a hair band. They were more of an insane band. But there were a lot of these other bands that were very, very clean, and everything was just perfectly choreographed, and they were made up with a lot of makeup. And then here comes Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Soundgarden and all these bands that just had that rawness to them where it wasn't they weren't apologizing, and they would go in the studio and just plug in their amps, put the mic on the thing, and just that's how the first album 10 was recorded. I mean, all of it is pretty much straight up right there. Obviously they did some tweaks here and there, and I'm sure there were overdubs on some parts, but it was pretty much all of them playing at once. So there's benefits to both. I think it's really finding that combination where you're not doing a whole album that's just layered and produced and like so clean that it loses the rawness of music. Music is in the moment. Music is not so like you know like Joey is like, wait a minute, I like metronomes.
Oh man, they're playing to a click track. They left
How
the click
dare
track
they?
on the track.
I
They
know.
made
Well,
it
I
a
mean,
part of the track.
well, sometimes like when you're near Neil Peart with Rush, you needed a click track because you didn't have to know where the hell you were, because
Mhm.
those guys were crazy. So Tommy, what do you think of that? What's your preference in recording techniques?
Well, I've been thinking about that a little bit. It's obviously writing stuff, like writing songs now, like getting more into that. And I just actually finished writing my first song, like ever,
Wow, nice,
recently. And
good
with
job.
a little bit of Sean's help, not with the lyrics, but with something else in it.
I-
But
I
not going to say
compose-
what. I'm not going to say what yet, though. You're going to have to wait and see.
Okay.
But anywho, but I was just thinking, also about like when we actually get to recording not only my song, but like any one of our songs if we wrote it, whatever we wrote. And I just feel that maybe it could probably maybe be half and half, like a little maybe overdubs here and there if we have to. But I feel like maybe we should try to do like in the moment more, as far as when first recording.
Right.
And like try to do like in the moment and just see what happens, and then just kind of play off of that. But
Yeah.
thinking about other artists who have like overdubbed and not overdubbed and whatnot, one that really comes into the mind when it comes to overdubbing is Boston, because
Ah,
basically
yeah.
most of the first album, their debut album, was done by Tom Schultz.
Mhm.
Their songwriter, lead guitarist, bass player. Pretty much, like when recording, it was mostly him doing everything, and then he had like two drummers, I think, play on the tracks, but mostly it was him playing the guitar and the bass on a lot of the songs, except for Foreplay Long Time, which was on that album. He didn't play the lead guitar track on it. Somebody else did, but again, mostly everything else was done by him. Like again, from lead guitar, rhythm guitar, acoustic guitar, and all that recording happened in his home in Watertown, Massachusetts, I believe. I think that's how you say it. And like most of it was recorded there. And just for the fact that all the stuff that you hear on that album, like the overdubs and all that, the guitar solos, like the guitar harmonies, even, like it's just insane to think that a lot of that stuff was probably recorded in his basement. Like,
Right. In his basement.
it's just kind of crazy to think.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just.
Yeah,
It's
if I may, Tom,
Go ahead.
a lot of people have contended and said that Boston was made as a result of that album, so that could be played
Yeah,
live.
I feel like pretty much.
So that's one of the interesting stories about that,
Mm-hmm.
is that Tom made that album up in his basement, and so people could hear that production, that overdubbed, production live.
Yeah.
He made a band that could, accomplish that.
Wow.
And actually, I think like before like Boston became a thing, I think he was in a band with Brad Delp, I believe his name was, the singer, and I think it was called Mother's Milk or something. That's kind of like how it kind of started, and eventually somehow it got to Boston. Yeah, I don't know that aspect, like how it got to be called Boston, but before that, they had demos under, I believe that name, with Brad Delp, the Schultz, and a few other people, and nobody really took it in, like, I guess, seriously, because it wasn't like, how should I say, it wasn't widely taken in as a good thing as compared to like what happened when it actually was recorded and came out, and then it kind of just flew to the top, pretty much.
I think that's how.
Yeah,
and I think that happens a lot with records, people making them like that and probably piss people off and stuff. And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it all in my basement. Like, you're an idiot, man.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Like,
work.
That was the thing too. I think like they were offered to go like to an actual studio and record all this stuff, and he's like, "No, I want to do it in my basement," pretty much.
Like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm doing this like no expectations. I'm gonna go to the basement.
Use whatever I have.
Nobody's pressuring me. There's no money on this. Besides, I bought this stuff, one-time fee. I'm not paying any rent, at a studio. No expectations. Whatever happens, happens. And I guess that was really good for Tom's creative process.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, it's the creative process. Thinking about More Than a Feeling, which is probably their biggest song. I mean, the one everyone knows.
Probably one of the biggest songs ever, actually.
And then, of all time, too. That apparently I read that he used a cheap, pretty much, $100 acoustic guitar to, I guess, record the song on and stuff. Apparently,
you mean the whole ding 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 ding?
I don't know if it was that or if it was like, because I don't know, like if he just like used the same guitar. I think it was like a Yamaha guitar, but I don't know if he like overdubbed and made it sound like a 12 string, or if he actually was a 12 string on it. But
but
I don't know about that part, but probably that part,
I think you could probably really get away with, if the music is good, you can get away with stuff like that. You know what I mean? If you have a great idea and good music and stuff. One of the things that was interesting about what you said was about, and what Sean said was that, there was no expectations. He's going to do it there. There's no pressures. Doesn't have to pay for anything.
Yeah.
All the pressure is away, and people just work so much better when they just don't care. They're going to do what they want to do. And so when you do that, you're able to really just focus on the actual product and not worry about what people are going to think of that product. If they were in a studio surrounded by everyone, I mean, that does work too, obviously, but it also reminds me, we were talking about Rush a second ago, 2112, right? Because their album previously to that did not do well, right? It actually bombed, and the studio was just about like ready to let them go, and they said they had one more album in them, and they knew they weren't even their record label kind of like gave up on them, and they went from opening up for Kiss and opening up for these big bands to suddenly not even really barely hitting like 1,000 people venues, and some of those were empty, and they were kind of like on their last leg. They went into the studio and they said, well, if we're gonna go out, we're going to go out doing the only thing that we care, because they had nothing to lose at this point. They knew they were out. They knew the record label gave up on them, and they just decided that's it. And they went and they came up with 2112. And when that came out, it was so epic that it just, obviously we all know the history of that. So, but again, it takes that kind of like, we're just going to do it without really caring what anybody thinks, so that's a really interesting point on recording, because when you're in the studio and somebody's flipping the dollars, studio time is freaking expensive, and you're there. Okay, we got to do that take again. Sweating. Are you going to get your best take, or are you going to get your most safest take? You're going to get the safest. You're going to be like, I got to make sure I don't make a mistake. So is that going to be your best, or is that going to be the safest? And that's where sometimes studio can really screw you up. What do you think, Joey, about that?
Yeah, I think what you said about like the studio stuff, I agree that it could make some of the like the mindsets and the experiences a bit more robotic than like, an actual organic performance. Because like you said, with the time limits and the money management, people have to be like boom, 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 which could kind of, create some tension and,
It does. You see documentaries on that.
Oh yeah.
You see sweat, you see tears.
And it could hinder the creative process, because you're not like, when you're in that mindset, you're not thinking of your best way to play it. You're just thinking of, I can't make a mistake. I gotta get this perfect take. No room for error, man. But when it's just like a live thing, in like a basement or something, or even like at someone's studio, but like you're not paying for anything, like Shaw's studio,
Right.
like you're getting that organic experience. There's no time limit. You're just playing. You're just playing with a flow, basically. But that's my take.
Yeah, that's definitely a really important factor about making an album. And there was another album. Also, when you have money, so like if you look at any the Rolling Stones, right? I mean, they're not going into the studio with any pressure. They're not. So the band, the money. It also reminds me of, I don't know if you guys seen the documentary with Metallica for the Black Album. So I don't know if you guys seen that documentary, but they were in the studio basically really just cursing each other out. I mean, they were just having a really rough time with one another because the pressure was so great. They were working with what's his name? Bob Rock, I think was his name.
Yes.
And he's like he's produced huge albums, right? I think his he also did Bon Jovi, so Metallica was not happy about the Bon Jovi guy producing Metallica, because Metallica had their own specific thing. And of course the album came out much more commercial, right? The most commercial album that they've ever had up to that point, or since then, really. I don't think they've come even close to the Black Album. But in the studio you can see the Lars and James really going at it, on just different takes, and Lars is trying to play something and he's like, he's not getting it, he's not, and they're just not duplicating each other, so that pressure, because Metallica at that point, well, they were famous, they were big, but they weren't as big as what they were going to become. That album just made them a super band, where before they were just like a really popular band, a really great band. So in the studio, what do you guys think of is one of the most important elements to recording? Like when you guys are working on a track, what, I'll start with Andres, like to get a song down, what is one of the key elements that you think should be there first before the music? Let's just say the song is already done. You guys know the song. You guys are just going in the studio. What's the most important thing that you would start off with?
Well, I think you'd be wise to come up with a plan. Like plans don't always go according to the plan, but if you at least go in with an idea of what order we should do things, things could run more smoothly. And also, is everybody knowing their part and basically going in with the band should basically have the album done, and all that's left to do is like record it. And then even that has its problems. Like I know I watched a Metallica documentary as well, but it was for the Master of Puppets album.
Ah, yeah, that was actually rough too, right?
Yeah, they had to do it, like they had to decide where they were gonna do it, and they ended up deciding to go to, I think, somewhere in Europe, maybe Holland, I think, or Germany, because because of money wise, they would be able to pay less for like double the time they would have in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, I think going in as stress free as possible would probably be a good idea as well. Because, if you go in with that mindset that, oh, we got to move, we only have limited time here, we could do like maybe 4 takes per song, but we got to keep moving. That just opens the door to, stress and then arguments, and then oh no, we should do it like that. Well, we can't really do it like that. We have to get on to the next one because we don't have money to keep doing.
Yeah.
Takes.
I mean, unless you're like as tight as the Beatles were when they went
Yeah.
into the studio, where they could crank out 30 songs within a,
Yeah.
within a couple of days because they were just so tight because they had been playing they did 1,000 shows before they got there,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
the Please Please Me sessions were a marathon in one day.
Right. Look at that. I
Into
mean,
the
it's
morning.
just like,
I think
yeah. that's-
the album the one that has Twist and Shout.
Yeah, Please Please Me.
Yeah, like you could hear it at the end of because Twist and Shout was the last one they recorded, and John Lennon's voice, you could like hear it. He's like you could tell they just went through them, and
Yeah.
he's like struggling. You could hear him like his voice
Yeah.
breaking basically. And I think and that also that's that raw organic. You wouldn't get that if you just decided to play everything safe and do separate takes.
Mm-hmm.
You
And
would
that was the purpose of that album too, to get the most live sound possible, like to replicate a live Beatles show.
yeah.
So
Well, they did
that's how you'd feel after playing a whole set,
Right.
but a whole set maybe like 2 or 3 times over, like over 12, 13 hours in a day, in a recording studio.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are, yeah. I mean, I guess we already know what they are.
Yeah.
So Tommy, what do you think? Going into the studio, what's your mindset heading in there?
I do agree with Andres that we do need a plan because, like he said, it's just going to get stressful pretty much if we, just go in there, not have a plan, and then we just kind of like, how should I say, beat the living heck out of each other, just for no apparent reason, especially a few years down the line, you don't want that happening, either, not just now, but like in the future, so I feel like not only for like our first album, but like every album, we should have a plan somewhat, at least a little something to kind of give us a basis of, to go into there and say, hey, we're going to do it this way, and then blah, 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 But also for me as a guitarist, I feel like since I do struggle a little bit with leads, sometimes I try to figure them out. Like right now, when I play Sean's songs that he wrote and he wants me to do a solo on them, I try to pick it out, right then and there to the progression.
Yeah.
So at least I have a basis on something. And then maybe, eventually keep working on it. It'll get better and better as we go, and then when we get to recording it, hopefully it'll be great,
Yeah.
It'll come out really smooth.
And that's an interesting thing because leads was one of the things that I always used to overdub whenever I was in the studio, only because I didn't even know any difference. That's what you did, and we fell into that thing. But I thought that it was actually a good thing to do that because when I was playing, and it's not, I don't even know what, I don't really hear a lot of solos in songs anymore. Like when I was coming up, you had the verse, the chorus, another verse goes into a chorus, into a solo, into maybe a bridge, and then you get another chorus, and then you're out. There was always a solo that was a part of the actual structure, where today it's not really, I don't know if it is or it isn't, but it feels like it hasn't really been such a huge part of the actual song anymore. It's just the solo now has to be another voice, not necessarily the way I play. But it's not so fast. You don't have to be fancy. It's not. It has to be something that is telling another story in the song, and it's as melodic as the choruses and the vocals are. The 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 melody line of the actual chorus. I think it has to kind of blend into something like that. And then of course you add in your own flavor. So I would say going into the studio, having that already kind of mapped out where you
Yeah.
want to do a solo basically, I'm going to start here, I'm going to end up here. You got to know, and then you record like 3 or 4. I think Stairway to Heaven, right? One of the most famous solos ever, right?
The Forbidden
3
Rift.
solos. Yeah, Jimmy Page recorded 3 solos, and they were going back and forth trying to pick which one, and that's the one they picked. They said it was just because it was just that one. But can you imagine another solo with that, right? It wouldn't make any sense, right? For us now, obviously, but back then he recorded 3 solos. So I think that's also a good part to have in your plan. Like when are we gonna record the solos? Let's just get let's just get the song down and then go back and do that part. Which kind of defeats what I was saying originally about everybody doing it at once. But if you can do that also, then I would say try to do both. Try to just get all of it down, and then you go back later on and you try to add a solo in if you have to. Joey, what do you think about having a plan? Forget the plan, right? Let's
Yeah,
just get a bottle of Jack
You
Daniels.
just
Screw the plan.
feel it, man.
Screw the plan.
Get
Just
some Jack
improvise all day long.
Daniels, a couple of bottles of
Yeah.
the Sprites, and let's just
go
go to
jazz style. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
just wake me up on Monday morning.
It's free jazz.
Wing it. Freebird.
There you go.
This,
Just pull a Freebird on it, basically. Yeah.
we do not speak of that again.
Just run the tape, Jim. We're just gonna jam out here.
Yep.
Freebird,
Scam out. Freebird.
Freebird.
Well,
And
Farrell.
people are gonna have to. And people are gonna have to learn this.
Hey, Joey.
What?
What is your approach going to be when we get into the studio?
My approach. Well,
Freebird.
it's going to be feeling the beats. It's going to be listening along with you guys. And it's just going to be, coming up with the best part for the song. Simple as that.
Would you be going
I
in
haven't-
with the part?
Hmm?
Would you'd be going into the studio already with the part because you guys already have rehearsed the song. You guys already all know the song, so you have a part in mind going in. And I think everybody would have. That's part of the plan that Andres was talking about. Just
Well,
have a plan.
Well, I need to know after we rehearse the chords and everything like that. I need to probably the day after that. Have time to process before the day after, and then once I come the day after, then I'll have it all set up.
Yeah. How about you, Sean? What's your process? Play a lot of Beatles music and then start recording.
Probably. Right?
Well, to be honest, my process is all over the place. At least when it comes to songwriting, I've gotten so many different ideas from so many different places, and I can't talk about all those places on here because some of them that I mentioned to John are too comedic and might need to be censored.
Yeah.
But when it comes to recording, the final, I find that to be the final step in the process of really my creative process. And with the songs, what I have in mind is to start phasing them into our live sets and really getting them tight to the point that they just fit in and sound better, than the songs that we're covering in the first place. And until they're perfect and until they get to that point, that's my gauge really to deciding, are we ready to record? And I have a studio here fully equipped with, all the all the gear necessary to record us. So we have this access here without having to pay rent, for a space. There's going to be no pressure. It's going to be the pressure we put on ourselves to get these songs tight and be able to replicate really how skilled we are and how much chemistry we have as a band, because that's really what I want to showcase, at least for our first album. We're the best young band around. We have the tightest rhythm section. We pulled out all the stops when it comes to our arrangement. Like for this part, Joey is doing this type of groove, and then he knows instinctively, whether it be from playing so many times that he just goes with the same thing, or he comes up with something new on the spot, with feel. He just knows, and I know and have that communication with him, to make a song better or take a song to the next level. Andres, he came up with a rhythm part for this part, and then he changed it up for the chorus, and he was doing this during the solo in response to Tommy to make this section better. It's really, it's not like a puzzle, kind of like we said when it comes to like layered tracks and like doing that type of thing, but more like being an alchemist, like putting potions together. Like this is as close to perfect as we can ever get right here with these songs right here. So we're ready now to bang them out, and
for the gold.
This will be perfect. This will be platinum right here. This is platinum material. Because a break time is a great time.
That's right. So when you're crafting songs, are you thinking with what kind of parts, and this is for Sean, are you thinking with already what kind of parts you want them to? I don't want to create any any problems, but
I'll go full disclosure with it. Yeah. When I think of songs, and I'm putting them together, first, the first arrangement is always me at the piano and my voice and putting it together, whether it be the chords first or whatever melodic phrase comes up in the words. But when I put those together, sometimes I'm already hearing a certain like rhythm part in my head and what Tommy is doing in response to that, like with ornamentations and stuff like that. And when I come to them with these songs, I kind of feel the need, since I have all this in my head, to kind of take like a Brian Wilson or a Paul McCartney approach and say, since this is my song and I wrote this, I think I have the authority to try and guide you in this direction. But if it doesn't work, I am open to suggestions, and I'll try and factor them into what I'm seeing, and maybe that'll create something better than what I was originally thinking of. But most of the time, what I'm thinking of has been, for the most part, right. But I'm not going to give myself a pat on the back. Never mind, I'll do that. But Andres and Tommy actually have opened my eyes and ears a bit more to new possibilities when it comes to when we've discussed and covered like the original music and the arrangement behind it. But to your question, the short answer is yes. I think of all the parts when I'm writing the song. Like I just have it come to me, even the harmonies and all that.
Yeah, that's a very analytical way of looking at it. And it's also, it's just pragmatic to be that way when you're in a band, because you have to, not every one person in the band obviously is going to know everything. Even Paul McCartney needed John. Mm-hmm. John needed Paul, Ringo needed George needed John. You know what I mean? They all needed each other to create whatever it was. And you talk about alchemists, those guys really got into the studios and really created, that they created something very, very unique. So there is that idea that when someone goes into the studio, that someone would has to be the one kind of in,
Yeah, they have to be
not,
the director.
yeah, not even, yeah, not in charge, but yeah, just like a musical director that would say this song, and then everyone, because of their professional, their skill level on their instruments, they will bring in their skill level to that particular song. And a song never comes out how you think it's going to come out in your head. You sit there and you write it and you're like, oh, I like this song. I have a song called Thinking that I wrote like years so long ago, but it was like my mom's favorite song. Like I literally played that song at her funeral because she asked me to. So
Oh wow.
yeah, it was really an emotional thing. But I wrote this song, and I remember clearly. I was sitting like on my bed, and I was living in New York with 400 people in this apartment, and as I was playing, singing it in my head, and this is the way it sounded, and I was like, oh, I like how this sounds. It's a ballad, but I'm like, why not just throw like a little ballad that's almost like a country ballad? I'm like, why don't I just do that? And I remember playing it for Holland, and his response was so promising, because he was like, "Oh my god!" He was like, "Man, I freaking love that." He's like, "Can I sing it?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, you're the singer." I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "So he sings it." He thought I was gonna sing it. I was like, "No, yeah, I want you to sing it," And he sang it, and he changed what my idea, but he made it so much better. He just added, because he added a really good voice. He added his phrasing was different than what I had in mind. We kept all the music parts the same, but we did some arranging on some of the things. And and that was just him and me. Like we literally, by the time we got to the studio, the rest of the guys were just like falling in. They were just like, this is where it is, and they just fell into what it was. And then we had another song. One of the last songs that we played together as a band was called Devil Tree, which was a great song. We never got to record it, professionally. We got to only play it live at a gig somewhere, and I have that recording, so I'm glad I have that. But that song had like a bunch of layers. Like me and the guitarist Dave, who passed, we sat down and we purposely were listening to each other's guitars and we were trying to we were kind of insane, but we were trying to create one guitar sound with two guitars going. So if I was going ding ding, he was going dun dun ding ding dong ding ding dong. Ding. So we're trying to get that going. So when you hear the song, it's like there's like there's like a guitar goes ding, 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 but it's all these two guitars kind of like just meshing on top of each other. It sounds like one guitar, but when you hear it, you can tell it's two guitars because they both sound different. We also did it with a song called War Song, and at the end of that song there's a break part that goes into a simple GC back and forth, and we did a thing there where we did it like the idea came live on stage. We were literally playing, and we started doing this thing, and I remember I looked over to him and he was like smiling at me, and we were like, let's just keep doing this. I was doing a little rhythm thing, like I was going, and he was like, but we were both going back and forth with that. And I remember we both looked at each other. It was like a live, free kind of song. At the end, it was kind of like it opens up where you can do a lot of different things. And when we went to the studio, we were like, yo, we got to remember that thing we did. So we purposely went into the studio and then we recorded it exactly like that. So things come to you for the studio just from living life and playing with each other. You're gonna play and you're like, oh man, you know what? I just realized I should do this when we record it. The worst part is when you go to the studio and then you're done with the album and then you go on stage and you come up with something better, and then you're like, oh, I wish that was on the record, but then you just record it. But that's a a little you know sad sometimes too, because when you record it's finalized, you know what I mean? Like you can't go in and say, let's just record this whole album again, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
not gonna do that with it.
it's a snapshot.
Yeah,
It's a snapshot in time.
it's final, it's done. So you want to make sure that you put your best foot forward on that, and you're prepared to go in. with the songs, and you're tight, and again, I was the last thing I was going to say was that you guys are so far ahead as far as like most bands, because you guys have already a place to record. I mean, you guys don't understand the importance of it. Now, you guys are all know bands, and you all probably know people that can record you or whatever, but the fact that you have, a guy like Sean that has everything right there, you guys can take your time. If it takes you a week, to put one song together, so what? It took you a week to put one song together. In 12 weeks, you'll have an album. You know what I mean? It's like usually a song even takes longer than that. Sometimes depending on how complicated the song is. So yeah. So I mean, what do you guys think about live performances to come up with ideas? Have you guys? No, 'cause you guys haven't played out together as a unit, right? Not yet, because I think Andres,
not with Andres yet. No.
right, Andres came in, and then COVID, right? So
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all Andres' fault.
damn you.
Yeah, it's all Andres' fault. Andres, you're fired, man. Come on.
Oh man.
He brought the COVID.
Brought the COVID.
So, but when you guys are rehearsing, do you guys come up with stuff that you thought, oh, that might be good to go in there? You guys are rehearsing new stuff, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Like even with like cover material, like we come up with our own parts sometimes, and like I'm up here in the studio talking with Joey about how we're going to sync together like a certain part as the rhythm section in order to guide everybody else, but have fun with what we're doing at the same time, not showing off as much to diminish whatever's going on with like Tommy or Andres if they're going nuts on guitar already. So we're always like considering how can we make something better, and how can we make it ours and make it like human and unique and living, because that's really the experience that people come out to see a band for. They want to live, and they want to have an experience that they'll remember forever. So we're, even if we change it up live, that's even more fun if you come up with something on the spot, and you're tight enough. Like Joey, Tommy, and I, we've been playing together now for a year, but Joey and I, we've been playing for like 3 years now. So if Joey does something or I do something, we're always reacting to each other, and we don't have to say anything. Obviously, since we're the rhythm section, we don't get as much credit since I'm the bassist, and apparently no girls want to hang out with the bassist. It's all about the guitarist.
Oh man, the girls are about the rhythm section now, bro. That's what they're about.
Yeah, all about that bass. Yeah,
all about that bass.
We're seeing a shift in the cultural zeitgeist. But yeah, where the mind is,
I love how
always...
Joey and Tommy are like almost in unison.
Well, we're just gonna see about that.
the mind is always active. The whole thing is we're never gonna try and be robots. Up on stage. It's chemistry, and from the Elton John school of things, Elton John's never played something the same twice.
No
so.
Way.
And I like,
who does?
Yeah, like to add to that, like, yeah, I'd say one of our greatest strengths playing live is probably our call and response that we do. Because sometimes, like one of us will play like a little like motif idea, like a little triplet thing or something, and then like I'll accent that on the ride cymbal, and then like, Tommy will do that on the guitar or something like that, and then
he'll run over the.
Yeah,
he'll run across the stage.
Little things like that. It's like it's so subtle, but it's like seasoning. It puts the whole performance together. Like it makes it so much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's called having fun.
Yeah, it's also it's having fun and listening to one another too, because being in the moment and enjoying that moment and listening to each other and appreciating that moment that you guys are sharing. It's all it's all great, because when I was playing, there was a lot of bands that I ran into, a lot of bands that I met, and I remember they weren't paying attention to each other, on stage, and we always did. Like we always loved each other. We always loved to play, and I would, my thing was always turning to George while he was playing the drums, and that was my thing. And he'd be like, he's trying to keep it together and not freaking fall off the set. And that was just kind of like what we did, because we were just having so much fun, But
Got that stank face, man.
what was that?
Got that stank face, man.
Yeah, I just, and he'd be like trying to cry. Then we all did like just stupid things to one another. But then the bass player, our bass player Eddie Cruz, he went wireless. What a mistake that was. He would.
I love wireless receivers, man. That's the most fun part. Seeing everybody go nuts as we jump off the stage.
Yeah, he came in with this big unit, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm going wireless." So I was like, "I don't care, do whatever you want." So he went wireless, and so now we're playing on a stage, and I look over, and he's not even there. We half the time didn't know where he was. So one day I'm looking around, he's on top of the bar, and I think I might have mentioned this before, but he's walking back and forth on the bar playing, and the crowd is going crazy. They love it, but the bartender was really pissed off, and then at the end of the day, they got told, "Hey, don't jump on the bar, man. Don't be doing that." But the show was great, and some other times he would just leave, and we hear the bass going, so we know he's in the building, but he's like somewhere in the audience.
The bass player has left the building.
Yeah, that's something Tommy and I have done several times.
Don't worry,
it's not ending anytime soon.
It's probably going to get even better. We're going to be jumping on chairs, tables, anything that you can jump onto, we're doing.
Exactly.
Dude, you gotta start a mosh pit now while you can, bro.
You gotta get people into it, man.
We're gonna jump on top of Joey's kit. It's just gonna go all nuts from there.
Don't you fucking dare, bro.
I'm gonna see his kit
top.
I'm gonna shove my entire tom head into your nostril. That's even possible.
You gotta get one of those shields, around your drum set.
Yeah, I'll get like that little church drummer shield.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, try it now.
Or at least if he has like a drum riser, at least jump on the riser.
Oh yeah, try it now, suckers.
It's close enough.
Yeah. So you guys had your first rehearsal. How did that go? In how many months? 3 months? 2.5 months?
4,000 years? Yeah, just about.
Since March 22nd. That was
you remember the date?
March 22nd.
Really? Wow, that's my my wedding anniversary. Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Well, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, buddy.
That was months ago.
Yeah.
Well, happy anniversary
belated.
Anyway.
Happy belated.
Do people do that? Happy belated wedding anniversary.
From
Like
3 months ago.
3 months later. Oh, it was your wedding anniversary?
I'd be like, what did you just tell me? And get the hell out of my face.
But
I was just wishing you a happy anniversary.
Happy belated high school graduation. Man, I graduated like 40 years ago.
So we have some bad news to report from BreakTime Land.
Uh-oh.
Mr. Hungry Drummer Joey sustained a knee injury on his morning run a few days ago. So he wasn't able to be there at the rehearsal.
Yeah,
but
I had to chop it off. I can't walk anymore. I'm done.
You ever heard of that?
That's it.
You ever heard the guy from Def Leppard? He's gonna play with one leg. One arm.
So Joey got it chopped off, and that's gonna be his new drumstick.
That's it.
So
that's it.
What a gimmick!
So the three of us got together.
Yeah.
And we're figuring out all of our parts to the originals. Andres came in with some ideas, and then I kind of meshed them into what I thought of, and then I kind of changed. Tommy and I kind of changed Tommy's part up as well in reaction to that a tad, and basically, with each part, we're taking into consideration what space in the mix we are going to take, and also what the role of each part is doing to augment our songs like experience, because each song is an experience. And when Joey gets in, we've been tailoring each part to nice logo up there.
I should have done
to,
that earlier.
to create an open-ended spot for Joey, because usually I don't have a part in mind for Joey because he's just that good. You know, this
On
is
the spot, bro.
this is the part of the show where I kiss Joey.
We're not worthy.
but,
We're not worthy.
You know, Joey's so good that I don't have to think for him, and he just has a bunch of different grooves that he can choose from, and he comes up with his own stuff more times than not. He doesn't pick a groove. He just does his own thing.
It is true. 'Cause, I
Got
mean,
my rhythm
you know,
Italian recipes, bro. What can I say?
not to keep inflating his head, but from the songs that he picks, that he actually covers, they're not like they're not simple songs. He really is accomplished, so that's very well done. So it's good to have that, you know. Yeah, you're welcome. You know, one of the key things to have in a band is to have a great timekeeper. You know what I mean? Because that can kill you, man. If you have a drummer that is playing just, I mean, and luckily George was like an amazing drummer, so it was like great to play with him. But I've played with other groups, and when the drummer is just playing because that's just what he does, you know, he's not necessarily.
It's not like listening to
He's
the
not-
others.
Yeah, he's just kind of like playing because he's just behind the drums.
Yeah.
He's not trying to be part of the band. He's just trying to be the drummer. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't just be the drummer. You got to be part of
You
the band.
gotta be a musician.
Right, you
You're
gotta be the musician,
part
yeah.
of the whole sound. You know, you're part
So
of the
I play
production.
with guys like that, and it's such an important thing. So the fact that you guys both, you know, bass and drums is a really important part of the band. I mean, I would say it's the most important I'll try again. The most important part that no one ever really compliments that much. You know what I mean? Unless it's like you're musicians and you really know that. But that to me is like a really key factor. And then the guitar players are just like the madmen.
Yeah.
You know, they're the guys that go in and they're just gonna they're gonna be loud. They're gonna create a bunch
glue,
of.
and then the guitarist.
Yeah, when it comes to
over the glue.
when it comes to these two,
Excellent.
you know, I push these guys to work together on solos. Like I did that for the first time like a few days ago when we were having our session, and you know, it's a great thing because you know you gotta have chemistry. You know, you can't just be getting together for the first time with a bunch of guys and expect it to work out. But Andres and Tommy have known each other for a long while now. You know, Joey and I have known each other. You know, we have trust in each other.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of both playing live and a part of the creative process that, you know, we're all able to contribute our own individual talents to the whole, you know, product, but we have to have the ability to listen to each other, both in suggestions and what we're doing in the sense of the bigger picture. We have to, you know, trust each other enough to be open and say what needs to be said to further a certain project. You know, no holds barred. You know, the product is meant to be the best as possible, and we're going to get it to where it needs to be, no matter, you know, what hard feelings may come, because, you know, this is for the song, this is for the album, this is for the performance, this is for the band.
Right.
And, you know, these guys all have that. And I hope that they see that in me too, because I've been known to be more of the talker of the group than the listener, but I think I'm doing better in that area. But yeah, it takes.
They've all agreed. You've made wonderful strides to recovery.
Yes, and it takes trust. It takes listening, and it takes experience. It takes diverse experiences. You know, Andres and Joey, they're jazz cats as much as they're fans of rock and roll and classical. And you know, Tommy, he's the rock and roll, rockabilly, some jazz infusion in there.
To sum it up, I'm mostly rock and roll though.
Tommy actually has a background in jazz drums too. Like he's never revealed it to anybody, but he just showed me a video of
we have the video.
You mean
showed me an archive
that jazz
of,
drum? Yeah.
He was playing a jazz groove, and he was like, "Oh, I got to leave this to Joey because I can't do this."
Well, you know what? I'll tell the story like really, really quick. So I was at Guitar Center. That's the end of the story. No, I was at Guitar Center, and they had this drum kit there that basically, with that particular kit, you know, you can kind of. There's probably different grooves that you can like jam to. You know, they probably have like a rock groove, a jazz groove, and all that. So I had it set on jazz. So I hit the cymbal and it started playing, and I was just like. I just start grooving, and I hit the cymbal again, and I try to play a drum solo, and failed miserably.
From the sky.
Failed miserably, and I'm like, I watched that again the other day, and I cringed. Like, I couldn't. I was like,
I don't know how he does it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why I stick to guitar.
I don't know how he does it.
But yeah,
But anyway,
going back to what I said, you know, everybody has a different experience, and they're bringing a different flavor to the collective palette of what we're trying to do.
Right.
And you know, it's up to whoever, you know, writes the songs, and hopefully that's everybody. We are working on that. That we incorporate each person's experience and skill set into, you know, our product, because it's an extension of us.
yeah.
Well, usually when we get to this point where everyone is making faces, means that we've been here for about an hour.
Usually, we've been here for an hour, and it's almost time to leave.
We've been break time. Thank you.
Great time from this.
I'm gonna flash that every time somebody says something good. I'm gonna be like, all right.
All right.
All right.
Oh, also one thing I want to add
Carried
too.
that conversation and
Oh,
made
wait,
it come.
wait. Mr. Jojo has to say something.
Oh yeah, it was just going back to the thing. So like, yeah, one thing I've always experienced is like whenever coming up with the drum part is like it's always harder to play less than play more, especially like that's like
That's interesting.
I swear, because it's like, you know, it's so fun to just like, you know, hit stuff as like hard as fast as you can, especially live. You know, that's where the energy is for. But like when coming up with like a specific drum part, it's like it's kind of gotta exercise more of a strain a little bit. You know, gotta leave room for the music to breathe. So that's like, I feel like whenever I go through that, it's like a whole nother like sophisticated like, level of mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like that for guitars too. For me, it's also like that for
Yeah.
It's like that for me too. I was just always thinking younger. I was just thinking, can I play much faster? I want my pick to actually disintegrate. And then as I got more experience, I realized that the solo has to kind of fit what we're doing.
I'm going to use my thumbnail as a pick and pick really fast.
And that has to be controlled.
Thurl. Better watch it. It'll turn on you.
All right, guys. Well, as always, this is always a pleasure. I appreciate you guys. Sean, why don't you tell the audience where everyone can find you?
Yes.
Oh boy,
yes,
here we
yes.
go.
Listen up, children. You can follow us at BreakTime Live NJ. That's our beautiful band logo created by me. It was hand drawn and finished in GIF. So you can find us at BreakTime Live NJ, all platforms, and our website, www.breaktimelivenj.com. And all the information that we just spoke of and put into the cultural zeitgeist will be put into the cultural zeitgeist again in my autobiography.
Which will be released. Which you can pre-order now, which will be released in 2064.
In accordance with the pre-scheduled BreakTime reunion tour.
Yeah.
By that time, it can actually be downloaded into your brain by Amazon.
Yeah, we'll be
It's gonna be called
performing.
Amazon Brain.
And we'll be performing in virtual reality.
Yes, we'll be performing
It will be
from, from
2069.
our home.
We'll be holograms.
Yeah, we'll
2069.
all be
Because we'll
living
be
together
dead.
in the BreakTime mansion. We'll just have a huge plot of land, BreakTime mansion. We'll be performing from the BreakTime mansion on the rooftop, and it'll be projected as a hologram all across the world.
You know what? That could actually happen not too long from now. So
Yeah, Elvis, Whitney Houston. Who else is doing that already?
yeah, Sinatra
Jackson.
in
Beatles.
Vegas.
Yeah.
There's a whole show in Vegas with Sinatra, where you go see it, and Sinatra's right there. He just comes out, the summer wind, and he's got the whole an actual live orchestra, but he's a hologram. Creepy.
Scary.
Yeah. So
Twilight
all right,
shit.
guys.
All right.
Have a great night. I'll see you guys on
You do, John.
next.
Rock on,
Tuesday.
everybody.
I need a topic. All right. I need a topic. You guys gotta come together and give me some topics. All right.
Hot topics.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Take care.
As always, peace. Wait, it's not working. There we go.